Welcome again to The Actor's Vow. This is Denise Boratrapat, and what a week. I know we haven't talked or seen each other in 2 weeks, but I hope you follow on social media so you're able to see everything that's going on in The Actor's Vow and on my personal and professional life. But last week, I went to my first big premiere. And I've gone to big events before. I've gone to things where I have been invited as a plus one and so, but this felt extra special because it was the first time not only that it was a big premiere, but also that I had been invited me as myself, and I got to bring my own plus one. And although that is a small thing in the industry and in the grand scheme of things, that felt like a big accomplishment for me. Not only that, but it was an incredible experience because being part of the red carpet, being part of that event in itself, and also, I'm not gonna lie, Jason Momoa was there, and I'm a big fan of Jason Momoa, and I would be lying if I didn't say I kind of lost it for a moment. And that was very exciting, very exciting. But other than that, it's been good, it's been busy. There's new things coming to The Actor's Vow, things that we'll be able to talk in depth very soon. But just to give you a little bit to look forward to, the Actor's Vow coaching program is going to be having a summer intensive in person in Los Angeles. I know, I'm so excited. It's going to be a 3-day weekend in which we're going to be working all day in all things acting techniques, scene work, monologues. We're going to be working on stage combat even. We're going to be doing all the things that we do in the Actor's Vow coaching program in person and adding even more things. So whether if you are in the Actor's Vow coaching program or you're not, and you want to fly to LA for the summer, spend a week here, have fun, visit Los Angeles, walk to the Walk of Fame, and then attend the acting workshop of the year, this is going to be happening soon in this August. I do have the details, but I cannot give you the details yet. Everything's still in construction, but by the end of this month, you all should be able to sign up, get your tickets for the workshop, and start preparing for the summer of your lives. So I'm obviously very excited about it. I'm very excited to meet all of you in person, but I am even more excited to introduce to you this week's guest. And I am telling you genuinely, this week's conversation is one of my favorites that I have in this podcast. I know we have incredible guests here, but this one felt different. Brian Patacca. He is our guest today. He is currently a coach for actors. He was an actor himself. He's still an actor himself. I mean, it's just a label, right? All these labels, you don't have to be acting to be an actor. Once you're an actor, always an actor, which is something we talk about here in the podcast. But Brian is going to be here to talk about what he does, and that is help actors with a very mindset, spiritual approach to make the best out of their careers. He is not an audition coach, but he is kind of a career coach for actors. And I think his work is incredible because that is what is missing in the training of an actor. We have all these incredible schools that teach us technique and all these skills that are great for the artistic part of being an actor, but we forget that acting is a business. And as a business, you need to have the mindset and the knowledge on how to navigate it. That's where Brian comes in. Brian teaches his clients, and he's taught 542 actors so far. Actors who are on Broadway, off-Broadway, series regulars, writers, filmmakers. He has a wide range of clients. Brian is such a light in the world. You will hear through this whole interview how he has so much energy and so much positivity exuding from him, which I am sure is a big part of him as a coach, and that just transfers to all the actors that he works with. This is one of those conversations that you will want to hear more than once. There's so many little nuggets of wisdom in it that you might have to hear several times before you start internalizing all those ideas. So I'm not going to make you wait more. Let's welcome Brian Patacca to the Actor's Vow. Hi, Brian. Welcome to the Actor's Vow. It's so great to have you here today.
I am so lucky to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm really
Of
excited to
course.
talk to you and to get to be and meet more of your community.
Yes. Okay. So the first question that I ask everybody that comes to the podcast is, what made you want to be an actor?
Oi, 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 oi. I say that because I'm like, oh, I'm sure when people answer this, there's like 1,000 different things, but I can say if I can really go back and really be clear, when it kind of sparked, I know that for me, there was a part of it that was inescapable, could not explain. I'm doing exactly what I'm meant to do, and I'm having an impact on people. I remember in third grade, the first time that I had more lines than anyone else in the class. And like I was selling words. My job was to walk around and sell words in the third grade. And when people would laugh and giggle and like got a kick out of it, I was like, oh, there's some kind of superpower here. And then I think as I got older, it's turned more into just a reminding people of what it is to be human, our, messy, incredible, loving human condition of who we are. And I think that is what at the time, really made me want to be an actor. And also what I think also led me to wanting to be a coach for actors is that exact same story, is because I was so enraptured with helping people really step into their purpose and helping them really get the chance to do that thing that brought them to their calling in the first place.
Right. I love to hear all that evolution. Most of the times, everybody, when they say the first time, it's something that's more about self-validation, right? Like I got that first laugh, I
Yes.
felt good about myself. And then
Yes.
it evolves into this more sense of community and helping others. And you realize that acting is so much more than just like looking good on camera and feeling good.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
I think that's something about human technology, right? I think we're made to at some point feel like, oh, this makes me feel good. And then I want to do it more. And then you realize, oh, and when I'm feeling good, I'm like at a vibration where other people feel good about themselves at the same time. I think that's part of how we're built, so that we can like recognize the things that we're good at. Otherwise, you could be a plumber, you could be a mailman, or you could be a barista, you could do whatever. And those jobs are jobs that are calling those people to those, hopefully, or those vocations, one might say. So I think that, yeah, that's like part of our technology. I love the way you described that.
Absolutely. You kind of touched on this, but tell us at what moment then you decide, well, I also want to teach that. I want to be a coach.
Yeah. And to be very clear, just to be clear with your audience as they're listening, I coach actors on the business. I don't coach them on the performance of acting. And so for me, I think I was lucky. I know that I was lucky because I was in New York City for about a decade. Then I've been in LA for a little more than a decade. And in New York, I reached a certain level of busyness as an actor. Like I was making my living as an actor. I was doing a ton of commercials and doing TV and really loving my life. And I think there's this part of the actor that sometimes doesn't get acknowledged. That is the part of like, you are in low grade competition with the people around you, one level, right? Which I think like should not be part of what we love about acting, but there is a little bit of that, because you hear actors say, well, I just got the part. It doesn't mean as much to me because I didn't have to compete or try to get it. Because there's a thrill, there's a little tiny bit of a thrill there. And I totally get it. And there's also that thrill of like, oh, I'm suddenly going to be on set here. I have to go to this neighborhood. I have to go to fitting in this neighborhood. Like there's like a bubbly excitement to that kind of life of an actor. And I really love that. And I loved performing. And then I came to LA and I did some TV right away. And so I kind of got a good sense of what that was. And then I was like on set. I remember it very clearly. I was on set. I don't remember what show it was. And I had to cancel some of my clients that I was seeing privately, because I'd been coaching actors on the business since I had gotten my first off-Broadway show when I was like 25 years old. And I typically was just balancing being an actor and a coach and being an actor. And I just balanced it. When I was in a show, I wasn't coaching, and I would just go back and forth. And then I got in a bad mood when I had to cancel on my clients and go to set. And I was like, oh, that's some of that technology I talked about earlier, right? We're like, oh, actually, there's something about this. I would prefer to be sitting across from one of my actor clients, helping them, than to be here. And I was like, whoa, that's screwing with my identity. Wait, am I allowed to even think that way? And like, what about the money I invested into being an actor? And all those thoughts, of course, came rushing in. At a really great friend who wisely said, why don't you quit acting for 2 weeks and see what happens?
Okay.
And that was the permission slip I needed, because after the 2 weeks, it was 2 years, 10 years, 20 years. Like it was just so easy after that, because I just put all of that energy towards coaching, and all that acting background that I had didn't have to go out the window at all. All that acting background that I had has led me to being able to be a better coach for actors, because I had all those experiences and I know what it's like to go into the room and all those things. But now I get to bring all those other parts of my brain and my background I worked in advertising when I first came out of college, and I was a producer in college. And so And I love all that piece of it. And at the heart of this, over the course of this, I became ordained as a non-denominational reverend. Like I went to school for 3 years for this, and it was supposed to take 2 years, took me a little longer. And to me, that's because, like I said earlier, like I truly believe you're called to whatever vocation has chosen you. Like I think the acting chose you, you didn't choose acting, I often will say. And so that you're called to that. If we can believe that is the truth, then my job is to help you remind you of that truth again and again as you create practices and systems and things inside of your career so that you can feel good about that decision to say yes to that calling. Because I think oftentimes, like you said, we want validation. We want someone to say, yes, you're meant to be an actor. Keep going. Good job. And like, we deserve those things. We so deserve it. And I think sometimes my job is to be that cheerleader, but most of the time I think my job is to say, here's how we're going to do this so that you don't get stuck. Yeah, that was a long answer. That was a long answer.
No, that was great. I love that all those parts of your journey have brought you here. A lot of times it doesn't make sense as you're going through them. And then you finally make it to where you're supposed to be. And you're like, this feels right. Yeah. I love that you're teaching this to actors. One of the most common questions I always get is like, well, I went 4 years to acting school. I got out of it and I had no idea what to do. Like they don't teach you about the business side of it. And that's why you're here. So yeah. That is so cool. I love that you have mindset and spirituality being part of your coaching. And you seem to be such a confident, high energy person. So tell us, how have you gotten here? Have you always been like that?
Sure. Well, I've always been like that. I've always been an energetic person. I'd say that would be true. I think any of my past boyfriends would say so. And I'm sure that my mom would say so too. My mom said that she asked me when I was 4 years old, but what makes you feel good? And she said, I got really quiet and I was 4. And then I turned to her and I said, starting something and finishing it. And I think that really is still a piece of who I am. And even when that comes to creative endeavors, I think sometimes creatively we might think, well, there's no end to it, but I do think there is an end to and now it's performed or shared, some version of that when it comes to creativity. Like even if you think of a painter or a writer who's like, well, I'm not sure if I'm on my script version number 4 or 5, like at some point someone is reading it and experiencing it, and that sense of sharing with others, that is what I think part of my definition of done is being seen, I think, for what your art is. And so I think I've always been that way, but I would say that kind of some touchstones through my life that kind of I think led me here, where I went to school I grew up in a high school of 2,700 kids. Everyone was white. Everyone was straight. There was one Jewish person, one Black person, one Asian person, and everyone knew their name. And so I was very closeted because the possibility of me acknowledging my own identity as a gay man was not going to be feeling safe. This high school, by the way, was notoriously not a diversely safe high school. Like there were 3 suicides at this high school after I left. It has subsequently gotten much better, but I think to just kind of paint a picture of the being different was not okay. Right. So then I got to college. I was like, oh my gosh, there are different people in the world. It's okay. Like, oh my God, this is amazing. I love this. Like that was a huge waking up. I went to Northwestern in Chicago. So that was a huge waking up point for me. And then I think the others were knowing while I was in college, like that I loved acting and went full into my acting program. And at the same time was like, what am I doing with the rest of my time? And so I was always producing shows as well. So I had this other kind of motivation and ambition that was separate from just being an actor. And I think in the beginning, I had this I would say it was a very false limiting belief, like, oh, well, I'm going to make sure that I have this producing background so that if acting doesn't work out, I have like this other thing that I can do. What I didn't know was the producing and like marketing, whatever background was actually my real calling, trying to raise its little hand when I was 20 years old. Right. And so I went to New York City and I got a job right away. Again, the safe route for me was getting a job before I moved to New York City, but I was still young. I was still straight out of college and I worked in an advertising agency. And this was, I think, really shaped a lot of what I understand, because I worked in an advertising agency that handles Broadway shows. That's the only clients that they have are Broadway shows. And it's one of the longest running, it's called Sereno Coins, one of the longest running Broadway show advertising companies that there are. And so my clients were like Kiss Me Kate and Bringing the Noise, Bringing the Fun and On the Town and The Wild Party and all these incredible shows. And so in my meetings were with the producers of these shows. I'll never forget, I had a meeting with Brian Stokes Mitchell and Marianne Maisie, who were doing Kiss Me Kate at the time. And we had to like show them the artwork and like, cause we were going to have these things where they look like they were fighting each other, and then like use my body to be Brian Stokes Mitchell's body in one photo. Like, it was just so, it was like, so I was like, oh my God, my mind is exploding. I'm like this 23-year-old person getting to be around these huge Broadway stars. Right. But because I was there, and it was the advertising, Broadway is the art of advertising storytelling in many ways. Right. And so that made a huge impression on me. And then I got an off-Broadway show right away. And that show I was in for like 2.5 years. And that was an incredible time. And I think that also is where coaching started for me, because I'd be backstage with other actors in the show. And it was a show called The Donkey Show, produced by Jordan Roth. He's the head of the Nederlander organization now. So he produces shows all the time. And so, but in this show, we'd be backstage and we got to know each other very well. The show was very physical. We're all in the, like one dressing room. So everyone's taking their clothes off and getting dressed all the time. Right. And so I would be with these other actors who I'd hear them complaining about like not getting auditions or having a hard time getting seen or having a hard time getting representation. I'd be like, I watch them every night. They're incredible. That's not okay. How can it possibly be that they aren't getting the opportunities they deserve? So I'd say, come sit down next to Brian between our shows. And I'd be like, this is what you're going to do. Go do this and go get an agent. This is how you're going to do that. And I start telling them what to do. All of my own creation of like, having been in advertising, like these are ideas that I have, right? So kind of a little bit of a beginner's mind. So I wasn't limited by other beliefs of how you're supposed to do things. And it was working. And so that was like, oh, cool. I get to do this other thing while I'm acting. And I think that left a huge impression on me that like, my brain was just working a little differently than the actors who were standing next to me when it came to the business. Just a little different, like, and like a little more brave, I would say, a little less risk averse. I think a lot of actors carry around the like, when am I going to end up on someone's blacklist thought process? And like, I'm like, just so everyone is listening knows, like, no one has time to think about you that much. Don't want to burst any bubbles, but like your blacklist, it's just not happening unless you like walked into an office and like slapped someone or was like really a jerk. No one remembers you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I think that thought also comes from back in the days where the business was way smaller.
Yes.
And the teachers will tell you that. And it's like, well, things don't work like that anymore.
No. And the truth is like, they're seeing so many actors. And I think that is a piece of it as well. Right. But then those are the things that left the biggest mark on me. And then once I got to LA and I had that moment, like I said, where I was like, I want to be coaching more than I want to be acting. I really went into training as a life coach. So I went to really got true life coach training. And then have subsequently like invested in, of course, doing my Reverend training, and then a bunch of marketing classes that I think, parts from which I steal and think this works for actors and this doesn't. And like there's no place that I am happier than standing across from an actor. And I stand at my desk, so sitting or standing, but just so everyone gets a visual, I have a standing desk, but standing across from an actor and helping them. Like I saw a client this morning, he's got a ton of guest stars on his resume and he's just not seeing the auditions that he should see right now. And you would probably recognize him, right? Like he's that kind of an actor. And like, I thought it was so nice this is weird, perversely nice to hear someone at that level having the same worries that my actors who are working for their second co-star or have not gotten their recurring yet. The same exact thoughts are actors carry, right? Like, am I getting the right number of opportunities? And I say that not from like, oh, I'm bored with that worry, but rather like, I love to like, well, let's look at that and let's look, is there fact in there? How much of this is drama and how much of this is actually data as to what's going on? And so we can really get clear. And I love like sorting through that stuff with them. And there's
that's your marketing background there. I love that you're bringing that up, and we actually have very similar stories with that. I graduated college and moved to LA. I studied in New York, and I accidentally ended up working in marketing related things for 2 years, and I hated it, to be honest. I was like, I'm an actor, I'm a creative, I just want to be on set, I don't want to do this. And now years later, I realized how much that has helped me. Like what I learned in marketing has helped me almost as much as my 4 years of an acting degree.
Yeah. Isn't it wild? And, I don't know if you relate to this at all, but I notice whenever I'm watching a television show or a movie, like even, the best movies and TV shows aren't trying to teach us a lesson, because then we're like, this show feels too pedantic or something. Right. But you can see in the way that something is written, like, this is how someone is presenting their argument in the scene, or this is how they're trying to win a scene. And that's very similar, I think, to the part of our brain where we use marketing to try to like convince or persuade
Right.
someone,
Writing
right?
copy.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. And I think that that's one thing. So one of the classes that I teach inside my membership program is copywriting. We teach it, we do it once a month. And it's so like copywriting, I'm an actor, but then literally every actor is on that Zoom call, like leaned in, watching me edit an email because I'm explaining why this is going to make them feel more empowered to say it this way rather than saying it that way. And then they get better results, which is the huge surprise. I think somehow everybody got some book that said, sound like you have no personality when you write an email or when you work on your resume, and people will love you for it. Like, or like that, leave that book back in 1998. We have graduated from that.
Absolutely. It's a business. It's a business, and actors don't realize that. And I get it. We want to be artists and just dedicate to that, but that's just not how it works. The industry is a business. Well, let's get more into that business part then.
Yeah.
Let's talk about agents, which I think it's the pain of a lot of actors.
Yes.
There is a lot of young actors that listen to this podcast. It's mostly young actors who are starting out. And a big question is, when am I ready to look for an agent? And how do I find an agent that's right for me?
Yes. Before I answer that question, I just want to say, because you said there's a lot of young actors, I just want to say this to all the young actors or new actors listening. Keep doing it. Keep putting one foot in front of another. And almost don't trust your experience right now. I say that with just a little bit of lightness, because there's going to be some pounding the pavement and there's going to be some knocking your head up against the wall at this point in your career, right in the beginning. And I just really want to advocate for you saying yes to your calling and to seek out people who can help you, like you, right? Like you, Denise, right? Like people who can help and who can offer feedback and offer support, because there's this phrase that they use in recovery. I'm not in recovery, but it's a phrase they use that says, your own best thinking got you here. And I think when you're an actor in the very beginning, you just need somebody else to be offering you a new way of thinking so you don't get stuck. And it's so easy to make acting class like the solution to everything. Acting class is a solution to learning how to act. It's not the solution to how to run the business. So be very mindful of, like, there's probably a different investment you need to make in a coach or in something to understand. So just want to advocate for everybody, stay with it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I love that.
So how do actors know if they're ready for an agent? So I'm going to say something very controversial.
Okay.
I think that readiness is a myth, in that the sense that you are ever going to feel ready, unless you've got like a buttload of credit, like you got a ton of credits. Like, obviously I'm clearly ready. I've booked a bunch of TV beats. There's no joke. Everyone knows like that there is never a sign of this feeling of readiness that people might be working towards. That being said, do I think there's a couple pieces that should be in play before you reach out to agents? Yes. Here's the couple pieces. Should you have acting training? Yes. Should it be more than one class? Yes. Should it be with a real teacher and not a casting director? Not that cast directors can't teach you things. I want to be very clear. I do believe that they can, but it should be some kind of serious study of acting. I believe that. I also believe you should probably have a headshot. You should probably have a resume. I mean, otherwise, like what are you doing? Right. The thing where I start to second guess even what I just said, I want to lay this out here, is you and I both know people who got acting jobs because they were pretty, or they were young, or because they knew someone, and that some of this stuff doesn't apply. And it can be frustrating, and it can be annoying, and it can also be super exciting. Oh my God, how there's possibility around every corner, right? Mostly I think that most actors get frustrated by that, but I just want to say, the reason why I say this is, if you can get your acting work put onto a self-tape of any sort, if you know what obviously you have to know what a self-tape is to do that. I believe that you are ready for an agent. Here's why. Or a manager, let's say, because a manager sometimes comes a little easier than an agent in the beginning. So I just want to debunk a myth around like managers are for later down the road. I know a lot of clients who get managers first and then they get agents down the road. So I just want to help everyone get that piece. There are agents and managers at every level in this business. And what actors tend to do is like, well, they're a monolith. They become managers, and agents are people who expect you to look this way and have these kind of credits, and then they're going to be ready to send you out. Well, actually, no, because this agent over here is just starting their business and has only got a couple clients they're sending out, or they've got 10 clients and they're really only covering commercials right now. I think we take away the dignity of managers and agents by making them into one monolithic, like they are the high on a mountain, and give them the dignity of choosing you. And so what I want to say to actors is, so if you've got the headshot, you've got a resume with a few things on it, you've got some training under your belt, let's say a year to 2 years, let's just say that in the minimum land, I'm just going to throw that out there. That being said, somebody might have a bunch of dance training and then they started acting for only a year, and that person might be a little more ready than the person who's never performed in any way. So I want to this is all personal, right? If you can get yourself a self-tape put together and your headshot looks like you and your resume looks like you, I believe there is nothing to lose by reaching out to agents. The worst you can lose is that you find that no one in this particular moment that you reached out is interested. Cool. Rather than saying, I am a piece of crap and I need to give up on acting, you get to go, okay, cool. I bet I could do a little more training. You know what? That tape, it might not have been my best. Let's see if I can get a few credits on my own. I'm going to recircle this. I'll circle back on this in like 3 to 4 months. Do it again.
Right.
But I also think, I have a lot to say about agents and managers. But I also think that actors do themselves a huge disservice when they they send one email and they go, okay, they didn't write me back. So that means they don't want me. Yeah. Yeah. It is all in the follow-up. It is all in the follow-up. I can tell you the number of times I've had one of my clients say they got their agent after their third email. And so many actors will bail after the first email. Okay. One email done. And like one of my favorite stories is this actress who she sent 3 emails to everybody she reached out to. And on the third email, she got a call from an agent, a legendary boutique agency in New York, I will add, who said, we loved all of your emails and we really appreciated your follow-up. And when we got your third one was when we decided it was time to call you and have a meeting. And you're exactly who we thought you were going to be based on the emails that you sent.
Wow.
And that story is not unique to her. It's just the most easy one for me to share right now. I like to think of people like everybody who's opening your email is standing in line at Starbucks, holding their child's hand and the child is crying. So you sent an email. Good job. Can you like take yourself out of yourself for a minute and think about the person on the other end who's trying to work from home, has kids at school, and is running around trying to do all of the things and busy and trying to read your email while they're holding their phone. Like I picture them with a sandwich, like half on their face at the same, like really, I picture them in their worst moment reading your email. So I go, oh, I'm just going to help that busy person by sending them a second and third email. Like that's the way I like to think about it. And it takes out the idea of, they don't care. They don't like me. Silence means something. We can really make up stories. Yeah.
The worst you can do is take it personally. That I love that you brought up follow-ups. That's one of the things that I learned the most when working marketing and business. And it was so hard for me because I used to be like that. I'd be like, no, well, they didn't answer. They don't want to talk to me. And now that I have my own business, I realize, I get emails and sometimes I just forget to answer. I get busy and then I get a follow-up. I'm like, oh yes, that person. Sure. Totally. And yes, that's absolutely something actors need to hear.
Totally. Yes. I had a guest on my podcast and I had totally forgotten that she reached out to me before and she reached out again. And I was like, oh my gosh, of course I would. And the time she reached out to me, I was in the middle of teaching class and I was so grateful she reached out again. I was actually even a little bit embarrassed that she had to reach out again. And I was like, oh, what a good, weird feeling you bring up for me that I feel a little bit embarrassed. And now I want to even be nicer and do better for this particular podcast guest because I feel like I did a crappy job in the beginning responding. So just remember, like, your email can affect something inside someone. They can have a feeling, I just think that we need to not make a story out of silence. That's my only advice there.
Absolutely. So do you think that somebody who's starting out and has all these things that you said they should have would benefit more from having a small agency, thing than working by themselves and self-submitting?
Oh, cool. I'm going to say yes. And let me give you the and it's like a but. It's a little bit of a but though. So it's a yes, but don't you dare ever stop submitting yourself all the time, especially when that resume is thin. So submit all the time so that you are getting auditions. Part of what I think is so important that an actor needs to, one of the reasons let me go this way. One of the reasons that I had success as an actor is that I would have between 4 and 6 commercial auditions every single day when I was in New York City. Now, I don't think auditions are like that anymore, but at the time it was like, I was carrying a book bag with 4 outfits in it with 3 different pairs of shoes. It was real annoying, but also I loved it at the same time, right? Having to scarf down a lunch between I would have to write on a map, take this train to here so that I wouldn't forget. So I would make it to all of them in a day. That being said, going on that many auditions a day, you're not allowed to care. You're not allowed to get invested in any single one. I would get a call back and I'd be like, oh my God, what day was that? What was I wearing? I can't, like, it would be that kind of reaction.
Right.
The reason why I say the actor who says yes to a smaller agency in the very beginning, or an agency that's not, it says yes to them at the beginning, I should say. keep submitting yourself, because even though that we're going to imagine that that agent's going to work their butt off, we just need you to get that mileage of doing a lot of auditioning, whether those are self-tapes or being in person or a combination of the both. We just need that mileage under the belt of you getting better at it and like failing at some of them. You're not going to hit it out of the park every single time.
Right.
And that's why I think, yes, I do think having an agent would be better, because think of it this way. It's a difference between you submitting yourself and someone else submitting you at the same time. So that means there's just going to be more auditions coming your way.
Yeah.
And even if that the reason why I want to put the yes, but is don't rest on your laurels when you get that agent. So don't be like, okay, right, my hands off. Now my career's taken care of. I got an agent. And I think most actors know that, or most actors have heard the most annoying advice. This is the most annoying advice in the world, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'm sure you've heard it, which is like, agents get 10% of the money, so you have to do 90% of the work. I think
I knew you were going to say that.
I hate it so much, but I think it's a good one to listen to at that moment in the very beginning. So great, they're going to do that, right? So to me, that means keep submitting yourself, keep getting auditions on your own, working those muscles and getting gigs where you're like, oh my gosh, the footage from this is going to be killer. I can't wait to put it to my reel. Like, that's your job. And getting an agent in the beginning is a great idea. Yeah. I will also say, you then get to make yourself into the best client that ever lived. Like, that's your job. Like, great. You get to have training wheels with this maybe beginner agent or a beginner manager, where you're going to be like, okay, what does it mean to be a great client? I got to figure that out. It's my job to be this incredible client, because whether or not I stay with this manager or agent forever, this is a new relationship. It's a weird relationship. I think the manager agent client relationship can be very hard to navigate. And so you need to figure that out by being who you want to be, like whether that's communication, doing what they ask you to do, all that kind of stuff. So I don't want to jump the gun on what you want to talk about today, but I wanted to just put that little note in there.
No, I love that. And it's a partnership. I think that a lot of times actors are like, well, the agent works for me or I work for them. And it's like, well, you're working together to this same goal, right? Yes. It's not that they're just working for you and then you don't do anything, or vice versa. So yeah,
they're not I would say, like, don't make your managers and agents into an audition ATM. You're not just there to be like, give me my auditions, give me my auditions, give me my auditions, right? You've got work to do. And I love what you said about a part of it. Is so agree with that, because I think a lot of actors go into that relationship going, what can I do to make your job easier? And I'd be like, cool, but can you save that for like when you work for like a corporate person? And instead of, since this person works for you as well, could you say something different? Could you say something like, how do we think things are going? What do the numbers look like to you? As opposed to every actor in the world thinks they're not getting enough auditions. So someone's got to be wrong. So that means actors, right? So when you go to the meeting, you say, so, hey, do these numbers look good to you? Is this what you would expect?
Right.
And then when the manager or agent says, I wish you were getting more. My other clients are. I'm not sure what's going on. Let's take a look at your pictures together.
Right. Like, what can I do?
Yes. What can we do? Let's look together at it, instead of you coming in with like, here's the list of things I can do to make things better. I think it's good if you've done that homework, but going into the meeting with let's take a look at this together, as opposed to, I already know what needs to be fixed. Because I think if you go in that way, you're taking them away from their job. Like, they sit at their desk all day and they're the ones who go, you know what? Denise doesn't have a photo of her looking like XYZ. Every time I want to submit, I can't submit her because I don't have that photo that I need. Right. Great. That's the conversation you get to have, instead of you going, I thought I would get a photo of me with some red hair and blah, blah, blah. And like, I'm going to do that. Like, and the agent's like, cool. That's not great. You can do that. I'm sure. Right. Because I rarely think that when an actor comes to a manager or agent and says, I want to do XYZ, I think it's very rare that they say no, because they want to give the actor a sense of empowerment or the sense of being able to do something. And like, it could help, but I always want what needs to be done to come from the manager or agent when it comes to that relationship, because they are the ones sitting at their desk submitting, and they are the ones who we have to believe are an expert at the job, that part of their job. Right?
Absolutely. You trust them. That's their job. And they trust you to work to do the audition better. Absolutely. Yes. Let's talk about mindset. Yeah. You're very big on that. As I said, there's a lot of young people here. I think one of the biggest struggles is my family doesn't support me. Everybody's telling me to study something that is, rational, that's going to be better long term. Acting is just a dream. What would you tell to this person?
Your parents are right. First of all, that's the first, I would say that with a grain of salt. So let me say what I mean by that. I think it is ridiculous to pin on your vocation, on your calling, on acting, sustain my life, make my life easy, pay all my bills, pay my rent, make it easy for me to go on vacation and go to my friend's wedding and buy them a gift and not be, I think it is not fair for an actor who is in the beginning stages of their career to say, you should sustain my life to acting. And so I believe that it is possible. But what I believe is that when you're putting that much pressure on acting, it then becomes pressure on yourself. And then you kind of get distorted views of how good your acting is, or how good your manager is, or what kind of work you're doing. You're saying like, well, I'm not a good enough actor, that's why I don't make money. So I often say like, your parents are right, caveat. What are you doing to make sure that as an actor, you're feeling supported and not feeling insecure in your work? So a lot of times, I think a lot of actors, this is like the myth of myths of all myths. So please listen. I think a lot of actors go, I have to get a job that's got a flexible schedule. And they run towards the not lazy. They're really like hard jobs that don't pay a lot of money, but because they're flexible, they say yes to them.
Yeah.
And then just remember, you're setting yourself up then not to have a lot of money in your pocket. When in fact, where are all these auditions you need this flexible job for? Are you getting tons of auditions left and right and center? So I always say, you're probably really good at some other things. And I know you're smart because you're an actor already. And so if there's something that you like, oh, you know what, I'm really good at this kind of social media or graphic design, or I like to do this kind of writing for someone, that you can find yourself a job that is I put in quotes, full-time job, or a job that might seem a little more corporate, where you are so invaluable to them that they're like, oh yeah, totally, you can be flexible. So then I did that multiple times in the beginning of my acting career, and I have tons of clients who do it too. And the reason I just say that is I think that will give you confidence that your parents are wrong, that you're right. It'll give you the confidence, and it will also allow you to show them, hey, actually, I have this job that really supports me, that gives me such freedom. So when I'm acting, everything is great. You don't have to worry about me. My bills are going to be paid. It's going to be great. And I do think, if you can have the support of family in the beginning, it's really, such a gift. I remember my mom said to me, she goes, I think only famous people's kids get to be actors who live their life. She was like Gwyneth Paltrow. I remember her being like, well, yes, she is the daughter of famous people. You're right. And I remember just my mom like, she wasn't not supportive, but she was just a little bit worried.
Right.
And I think that was a very lucky response for me. But I do just really think that actors are some of the most incredibly resourceful people in the world, which is why I love working with them. And so I just really want you to tap into some of your strengths to say yes to some job that gives you freedom, some vocation, some paying the bills job that gives you some freedom, or your freedom job, or your survival job, or your thrival job, whatever you want to call it, so that you don't have to put that pressure on acting. So when the parents are not supportive, I think that gives you some like, hey, I'm going to be okay, real evidence for them. And then the other piece of it is, it's the best language that they have to say, I'm worried about you. It's unexpressed love for you, or poorly expressed love for you. Yeah. If there's any world where you can forgive them continuously, or I have this, my friend has this reaction. He says he and his mom have like a tenuous have a stressful relationship when he goes to visit sometimes. And so he says sometimes his mom will say something that bothers him so bad. And he says he has this reaction, goes, cool, mom. Like instead of like getting engaged, just be like, cool, mom. Like he'll just be like, cool, mom. Mm-hmm. Like he just like in his head, he's like, I'm going to surrender to whatever's being said in front of me. It doesn't mean I have to hitch my wagon to it, or say yes to it, or believe it. And so if your parents don't yet have the capacity to understand an acting career, rather than trying to buck up against that, you might surrender to it a little bit and say, I get it. It is hard to understand. Trust me, I got this. And another thing to say, I think also, is a lot of actors I notice, they get really resistant to educating their family about what it means to have an acting career. Yeah. Right? Like, are you on TV yet? Aunts and uncles are like, are you on TV yet? You're not on TV? Then I guess you're not successful. Like, I don't understand. Right. Or like, when will I see, or did you get an agent? I think you should be on that show. Like all those kinds of advice that make you insane. Right. And I think that we have to at least go, I totally thank you so much. I would love to be on that show. It's not exactly how things work, but I can tell you, this is what's good. So this is the good thing I can share with you, so I think that's always a way to help educate.
Right. We get so defensive, and we forget that if we weren't in the industry, we would probably be saying those things too, because that's what most people believe.
Where I think about like a painter who's trying, if someone's like, I'm a professional painter, like not a wall painter, but like a portrait painter, I would be like, I would want to ask a million questions. I'd also be like, how do I ask a question? Because I know artists, right? I would be a little more thoughtful. I'd be like, so are your paintings and like, what is the goal? How does painting work? Like, I'd literally be like, I feel like I'm stopped up. So tell me a little bit about what that means. I don't know any other painters. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? And people in your family aren't going to bring that much curiosity to it. To them, you might as well be Bonnie and Clyde or an outlaw. They don't understand your career at all. So you have to give them a little bit of an education.
Absolutely. And I love so much that you talked about the side job. I always say that actors are so creative. Like when you are an artist, you usually cannot just act, but you also are good at writing or painting. Like you have all this creativity flowing through you. And then you go to the easiest thing, like you go to work at Starbucks. There's nothing wrong if that's what you want to do, but I do think that there are more options, and sometimes going out of college being an actor, you think that that's your only way to go about it.
Yeah. And I think you just put the like flexible job as the top priority, and I would say, can you put secure before flexible once, just like or one that like makes you shine, or one where you know, like, I am so good at this, somebody's gonna love me for this skill, right?
Yeah, and I think it's also one that doesn't make my life miserable.
Oh, no, yeah, because it can't. I feel like it can't. You're not going to give good auditions if you're miserable every day or exhausted. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that then. If you're somebody who has been in the industry for a while, you're not starting out, and you've been a few years, you audition, and you're not getting that much, and you're not where you would like to be, and you're starting to lose that drive because it's hard as an actor.
Yes.
And you start questioning, when should I quit? Is it time to quit?
Yeah.
What do you think the answer to that is? Is there a time where you should quit?
I always say, I love this question because every day you're not quitting, you're making the choice not to quit. So I'm a huge advocate for quitting, or the idea of quitting, or giving yourself the option to think that quitting is to make quitting an option. Too many of us don't allow it to be something that we consider. And what I mean by that is every action you take toward your acting career is an action that is not toward quitting. So we tend to identify, if I'm not on set or not on stage, I'm not really acting, I'm not really being an actor. When actually I would say your preparation for acting class, being in acting class, getting the wardrobe that you need to get, shooting your headshots, making sure that your boss knows that you need to be able to go to auditions, like all of those pieces of it are part of you saying yes to your acting career. And so there's a point, if you're talking about the actor you're talking about, where you have to kind of go, is my life looking like the way that I want to look at? If I can walk around for 24 hours and pretend I'm not an actor and still feel okay, that is some data for you to collect. I always say, like, do an experiment with yourself for the next 24 hours. Okay, great. For the next 24 hours, don't be an actor. What does it feel like? Okay, let's see. And so for the next 24 hours, I'm not going to think about acting. I wasn't able, and most often I wasn't able to do it. Okay, great. So you probably can't quit. You could try. I always say that you can try to quit. Here's the truth. Some people acting is meant to bring them to something, like myself. It was 100% meant to bring something. If you start to get that intuition, allow yourself permission to get curious and know that your acting career is not going to suffer because you decided to look at it. You decided to consider it, right? I always say, give yourself a time frame to consider, if that helps you. But what doesn't happen is a lot of actors have this, like, they want their life to look a certain way and they're holding acting up against it. And instead of it being a conversation of this dream life and acting, it becomes, well, can acting give me everything that I need? And so it gets such a focus there instead of, like I remember I was with a client yesterday. He has a wife and a kid, and they moved into a house in Pasadena, and they're renting their house, and they have like this full family life. And he knows that acting is his thing. And so does he have some other work that he does so that he can maintain his bills and Yeah, he just kind of accepted it, like, that's my calling. This is what's happening. And that doesn't mean you're meant to suffer. I want to just continue to say that, because I think where this gets tricky is when we have chosen the job that makes us work too hard and doesn't pay us enough money, and acting doesn't feel like it's happening at the same time. That's when the quitting vibes come. That's when the quitting vibes want to come move in next door. And so what I always say is this: you can quit acting, but chances are your next door neighbor is going to be acting. and they're going to be loud, and they're going to throw parties in the middle of the night, and they are going to leave their garbage cans out every day, and they are going to make sure you know that they're your neighbor until you decide a relationship with what that acting is going to look like. One of the pieces that advice that I got when I was saying, I think coaching is my thing, I think I'm going to do this, right, and really feeling free about it, was when someone said to me, you will always be an actor. And I was like, oh, that no matter what I do with that talent, skill, experience, whatever, I will always be an actor. That gave me some piece of solace. So in the idea of, or in the patience and calmness that I would want you to have when you consider this, have that thought as well. You will always be an actor, and then see what it feels like to try it on for a minute. I think so many of us are just scared to even consider it. And I think that is a mistake. You have to go walk towards it. Go, okay, great. I'm going to quit for the next 2 days. I'm not acting for 2 days. Let's see what happens. Or a week. Oh my gosh. And see what happens. And there might be parameters for, they have to play a little bit of mind games with yourself or what that means. Because if your agent calls, you're not going to not pick up their call or something. But like, what does it mean for me not to put effort, time, or energy or money into my acting career for 2 weeks? That's how I did my switch. I had 2 weeks of like, I'm not going to put my time, energy, or money. I'll still be a good client. I'll still go to auditions if I get them, but I'm not going to reach out or try to put energy in anything other than what's coming my way. And that made it easy for me because I was like, oh, I'm not disturbed by that. It didn't.
Right. Like, how do you feel at the end of those 2 weeks?
Yeah. And that might be surprising to some people because I want everyone to say yes to acting as long as they possibly can. Right. But I do think that kind of rumspringa for the soul, where you take a step back and you give it a space, can be reaffirming, can be incredibly reaffirming.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. That's good. And it doesn't give you the idea that, well, I'm quitting and that's it. Well, I'm just giving myself 2 weeks. It's just a little break and let's see how I feel. It's very scary. And the thing that I hear the most is I've invested so many years and like my family didn't support me. And now that they're on board, I'm quitting. Like I'm going to be a failure. There's always these thoughts that come to an actor's mind, right? And realizing that's a thought. It's okay. That's not the truth.
Not the truth. But also I think what you said is important, because I think that failure piece is a big piece to be say, if you quit, you seem like a failure. So that's why I do think during that 2 weeks, you want to give yourself the space to be curious and discover and be an adventure of like, well, what's the next adventure look like then? Yeah. Because whatever the next thing that comes up for you might be like, oh, that's really exciting. Like when coaching came to me, it was very clear, like, oh, this is what I want. Like, so if there is something out there, it will reveal itself to you if you make space for it, I believe.
Absolutely. Let's talk about nowadays and our current state, which things have changed a lot with the pandemic. How do you see things moving forward? What does it mean, the pandemic and all these new self-tapes and no auditions in person for actors? What are we supposed to expect?
Well, first things first, I think this is a landmark year for actors because I think this business has not stopped. Even during the pandemic, it was figuring itself out. But I think we're seeing a lot of things being made quickly because they wanted to be made and they couldn't be. So I think it's an important time to be represented for actors to be getting auditions. So if you need help with that, you know where to come. What I really want everyone to take away from the self-tape situation is right now, more than ever in our career. So there was a time when self-tapes were already happening. It wasn't like they were never happening, but now they're the thing. This business is more evidence-based than it has ever been. Let me explain that to you. So if you say, I can do funny, I need to see a tape of you doing funny. If you say I do drama, you need to show me you can do drama. So I almost feel like your resume, schmesume, no one cares. What we care about is, can I see this person in this role? And can I see them based on the footage that they have of themselves? So that isn't to say run out and go spend $1 million on getting real sets and getting tapes and going to do every student film in the world to get footage, which all those things are great ways to get footage. But it means you probably need to self-tape in like, the 3 to 5 genre character types that you typically play, and that your agents need that, whether that's real footage or self-tape, because to get you in, to believe that you can do what you say you can do, I'm going to need to see you do it. And I think that's the big thing we need to take away from it. And the good news about that is, oh my goodness, I am going to be recognized for my art over my receipts. I'm going to be recognized for what I can do instead of where I went to school. And so we used to be reduced to exactly what's on that resume, or whose name is at the top of that resume, or who do I know, or where did I go to school? And those things are so important. I'm not taking any of that away. I think those things can still move a lot of mountains and get you into rooms and all of that. But if you can show me the work, I'm going to be saying yes without needing to look at that.
Right.
So that should be very empowering. So I just want everyone to just hear that it does not mean that, you have to go spend a lot of money to fix this, but just knowing that we're going to need evidence to see that. And then the other thing about this, and I'm sure you feel this way too, is like in person, there's some fun things that get to happen when you go to auditions in person. There's a nice moment you get with that casting director.
Yeah.
There's an adjustment you might get in the room. That's the part that I think really sucks right now, is rarely getting an adjustment unless you get a callback where they decide to give you feedback. That when you're putting, if you can feel very much like I'm putting things out into the ether and who knows what's happening with them. And that I think is we're going to have to get a stronger muscle around that. Right. Yeah.
But also for those actors who don't like in-person auditions that might be more shy, they now get a chance to be behind the camera and do their work.
Totally. And I think it's a really benefit of like, oh, I have an audition that's due by 6 o'clock tomorrow. I can shoot that. I can put them like, now the job situation is even real flexible because great, they don't need the tape till tomorrow. If they need me to shoot, I can take the day off from work. Like there's a lot more, that part of it I love. The actor doesn't have to spend money on gas. Like I love that all piece of it, or running or sweat and tears trying to get themselves all over town. That part I think is helpful. I think the being alone part is a part to really, that's the hurdle, right? The like, who's going to be my reader and how am I going to feel like I'm doing a good job, and that part of it. Yeah,
absolutely. I just want to clarify. I know you said it, but for those people listening that are starting out, you said you don't have to go out there and pay thousands of dollars to get a video reel. I can do self-tapes.
Yes. I'm so glad you underlined that. That is so, it is so important. It is. And I'll tell you, I've helped a lot of actors get agents and managers, and most of them never had a reel. And I actually think your reel can kind of get in the way, to be honest with you, because I think your reel is work you did 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Who knows how good the footage is? Could not be the best. Yeah, your best work is the work you did yesterday. So you're never going to have the footage from yesterday. And so I just think that, yes, should you have a reel? Yes, should it? But I just always think that like self-tapes are going to be the way to go now. And I think it's so much more empowering for the actor.
Absolutely. I love it. And to be honest, I've heard people in the industry say no. And I'm always like, why not? Actually, yes. So I'm glad that you said that. Okay, before you go, I have 3 short questions that I like to finish with. The first one is, can you tell us 3 movies or TV shows that have impacted your life?
Yes. The Color Purple has been my favorite movie for my whole life. Should I tell you why?
Why? Yes.
I think so. I always think that films and television shows that impact us reveal our values to us. And I have a strong value around friendship. And while the film of The Color Purple is not the same as the book of The Color Purple, I think that they whitewashed some things. I don't know if that's the right word, but they definitely took some things out of it. But it is such a film about love of friendship. And that truly told me that. And then also it's celebrating is not the right word, but it is showing otherness. And I cannot equate my cisgendered white homosexual otherness with the same as a Black woman in the South. But the story of otherness was something that as a child, I was a child when that movie came out, I could relate to. People don't treat her well. And so that piece of it is what I understood of like, I see myself in a character like that.
Right.
And then 3, oh my goodness, I can just, y'all need to watch this TV show. Not enough people have watched this TV show. Do not get mad at me because the beginning of it is slow and then you're going to fall in love. It's called Giri Haji, Giri Hagi. It is, it takes place in London and in Tokyo. The woman who's in it, you'll recognize right away. She was in Harry Potter, one of the women. And it's a story of this very cool detective in Tokyo trying to solve the problem of his brother's disappearance. And so it takes place in Tokyo and Japan Japan and London at the same time, and kind of the family going back and forth. And the storytelling is brilliant. And it has one of the most daring season finales I've ever seen on television in my entire life. And I just think it is such an incredible show. And it's also like you cry, the music is good. It was really beautiful.
Okay. Now I want to go watch it.
Yeah, good. I can't say that I'm like really trying to root for this, because you got to get through the first episode and a half, because it starts slow. I think every show starts slow, just so you know. And I mean, I think I love everything by Michaela Coelho. So I Will Destroy You from HBO, which is like, and I just think that her storytelling is incredible. And the story of the creation of that TV show, I don't know if you know the story, but she wrote this show. It's called I Will Destroy You. She was trying to sell it to Netflix and to HBO. And when she went to Netflix, she had this meeting with one of the buyers there. It was this woman, and she was meeting with her. And I just remember, I'm probably not getting the story exactly right, but what I know is she wanted something. She wanted a certain amount of ownership in her piece. And she's like, Netflix will not give that to you. And she said, well, then I'm not going to be able to give this to you, and realize like that this is like Netflix giving you millions of dollars to make your show, and she's going to say no to them. And as she said, well, I'm not going to be able to, I'm not going to be able to bring my show to Netflix. The woman who was the person who was working for Netflix said, I'm so proud of you. So like that the woman at Netflix was doing what she had to do based on her job, but she also was like, this show is so good, you should do this. And I just thought that was such a powerful story of us owning ourselves. And so that's like outside of what the show is about. The show is brilliant, but I think that made the show mean even more to me.
Yeah. I love that. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us 2 books now that actors should read?
Oh my, you're hurting me. I have my own book club. Okay. The books you should read. Okay. Anything by Anne Lamott. Anne Lamott is a poet, and she also writes beautifully about the human spirit. And I quote her a lot in the work that I do with actors. She talks a lot about grace. She talks a lot about having trust and faith in what's provided for you. She really speaks to the spiritual part of being an actor. She's not writing for actors. She's just writing for human beings, but I think hers is one of the best. And then I think everything by Brené Brown, everyone should read till they can't sleep anymore, because it's so clearly about emotion and shame and storytelling. And I'm very much inspired by her work, and I do one of her programs, and I use a lot of her work in the work that I do with my clients.
I love that. I love how you didn't give the 2 obvious books for actors that were just about acting.
Oh yeah, like Respect for Acting by Uta Hagen, which I love, but no, you guys already got that one. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, and now to end, give us the one piece of advice that changed your life.
I don't know who said this to me or where I read it, and I'm sure it's somebody famous. It's a quote, and it was, leap and the net will appear. And that's like an old quote that's been floating around for forever, but someone said it at some point, or I read it, or someone said it to me, and I just took that, and it has made me, I think, dangerous even in the way when it comes to risk. Like, I'm willing to try something. Like, my worst case scenario is like, cool, let's see if the worst case scenario happens. And it has been the best advice I ever received. And I'll just say, I help a lot of, we've talked about this, right? I help a lot of actors get agents, right? And in this way, I'm like, the way that I created how to do that, I'm like, this is how I think this should be done. And then I like created something, and then I interviewed actors to make sure, like, okay, would they like to do that? Like, and I went back and forth, and I was like, okay, let's see if this works. And it worked, and it works really well. And the reason why I say that is there's like, what was the worst that happened? Okay, Brian, you did a lot of work interviewing actors, asking questions. You did a lot of work trying to create this. If it didn't work, you'd be like, okay, sorry, this didn't work. Let's create something else. But I felt so strongly about it like that. I just think being non-risk averse gives us, you will learn so much more by doing something than you will thinking about it. I think thinking about doing something has very little value unless you're a freaking philosopher. You should be thinking later. Like, you will learn more by making a mistake than you will be thinking about the mistakes you might make.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
What a great advice.
Yes.
Well, tell the listeners where they can find you and work with you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I would love to meet anyone from your audience. Please tell me that you met me on this podcast if you did. The best place to go is a website called makeagentswantyou.com. And there is a free training waiting for you that teaches you all about how to reach out to agents and managers. I've helped 542 actors find agents, and I really believe in this work. And whether you are going to be reaching out to agents or managers, or you want to write really good emails when it comes to pitching yourself to casting directors, this training really helps you. So that's the place if you want to get that free training. It's about an hour long. And then I am on Instagram all the time. Happy to send me a DM. Brian Says That is my Instagram handle. And I would love to see you there.
All right. Thank you. Everybody go follow Brian. I love his content on social media. Thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you for everything you do for this audience. I'm so lucky to be here. Thank you.
Editing this conversation and listening to it again really put me in such a good mood. I hope that you found it as motivational and inspirational as I did, go follow Brian on social media. He posts amazing advice and such fun content. You will definitely find it so useful as an actor. If you want to find an agent, if you're starting out, or even if you've been an actor for a long time, you will find value in what Brian shares. This is going to be all for this week. Thank you so much for listening to the Actors Vow podcast. As always, don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and follow the Actors Vows on social media. In all social media platforms, it's at the Actors Vow. There is a lot going on TikTok, on Instagram, also have Twitter and YouTube. And on YouTube, you can see all the interviews that you're hearing here on the podcast, but with video. Let me know in the DMs if you have any questions, if there's something that you want me to talk about in the podcast, or a special guest that you would like to see in the Actors Vow. I hope you have an incredible rest of your week, and I will see you guys next Wednesday.